Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Joseph Oliveira and Adrian Garcia's The Goatman Trilogy. So this consists of Book 1, Rise of the Goatman, Book 2, Birth of the Goatman, and Book 3, The Hunt for Goatman. So these are graphic novels, comic books, if you will, based around the Goatman legend from Texas, from specifically the old Alton Bridge between Denton and Copper Canyon, Texas, which is supposedly haunted by a figure or a demon or a spirit of some kind called the Goatman, who's supposed to be a sort of goat-human hybrid. It's a very loose adaptation of that legend in this trilogy. Each of the three graphic novels serves its own particular purpose within the structure of the story. Rise of the Goatman gives us the introduction to this creature, in that we have a family who sort of comes to stay in this remote cabin. The daughter finds the records of a guy who had hunted down the Goatman after it murdered his wife. He imprisoned it, tortured it, etc., etc. The father finds the Goatman still imprisoned. The family dog, actually, is the first one who finds it, and the father then follows the family dog, ends up releasing the Goatman, who kills the entire family. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about this first book. One of them is that we get the first indication that this is very clearly a British author. And this is a minor point, but it's kind of interesting because even though the story is set in the US, particularly set in Texas, there's some British terminology. Like, everything gets measured in kilometers rather than miles. And in this book, the wife of the family that gets murdered refers to her husband's bum, which is, not really something we say in the US. So we've got those things, which I say they're minor things, but they're odd enough little sort of things that they, at least for me, kind of take me out of the story almost. Because I'm like, that's not what an American would say. So there's that bit. But one of the things I find really striking is we have this opening bit where a character commits suicide. And we don't yet have enough of a framework to sort of tell who this is or why they're committing suicide. But he commits suicide by hanging. And that's interesting because in the Goatman legend from the old Alton Bridge, one popular version of it, and this is the one that's on Wikipedia, this is the one that in BuzzFeed Unsolved they talked about, that there was a successful African-American goat farmer who lived near the bridge, and because he was financially successful, the clan was not that keen, and they hanged him off of the bridge. So the fact that we open with this hanging figure is really, really interesting, because ultimately that version has nothing to do with this trilogy. That version never even comes up. Instead, in Birth of the Goatman, we get a completely different theory of this character. Namely that this character had been a guy whose daughter had a terminal illness. They didn't have the money to cover the medical costs, and so he agreed to sign up for medical testing. He was injected with an experimental vaccine, which they were for some reason getting from goats. And basically he was transformed by this vaccine into the Goatman. And incredibly strong, incredibly resilient, half human, half goat. And he begins taking revenge on the people who transformed him. So that is what it is. Somebody else in the Goodreads review of this second book in the series actually made this point, and I think it's a fair one, that in some sense, Rise of the Goatman is really interesting because we don't get an explanation. It's just a mystery. Where the Goatman comes from, what his motives are, etc., etc. And it's almost a little disappointing that in Birth of the Goatman we get this, oh, it's Big Pharma fucking around with goat serums and whatever. And I don't know. I also have a bit of an issue with the idea that, like, this pharmaceutical company made it to the human trials phase with an experimental vaccine that goes that catastrophically wrong. I get that serves a particular function in the narrative, but, like, my understanding, and this may be wrong, so if I am wrong about this, correct me in the comments, but my understanding is that in order to get to human trials for any sort of medication in the US, you need to establish that it's going to have a reasonable margin of safety. And, like, this is a catastrophic failure of safety. So I don't see how the FDA would even give permission for trials like this. And no company that actually is intending to put out a serum or a vaccine or something for public consumption would be doing human trials without FDA oversight. You simply wouldn't be able to market that medicine. So there's a bit of a problem there. And again, it serves a function in the storyline, but Then the trilogy ends with the hunt for Goatman. The Goatman, so we have Agent Garcia, who actually shows up in Birth of the Goatman, gets chucked out a window by the Goatman when Agent Garcia of the FBI shoots at the Goatman. Book 3 opens actually with another very bizarre scene, in my opinion. You have this father and son, and they're out hunting. And they're hunting a goat. Like, okay, so this dad's a real fucking asshole. And he's like, oh, shoot that goat. And the son's like, I don't really want to shoot this goat for no good reason. And dad's like, I'm going to make a man out of you by forcing you to shoot a goat against your will. So that's all not fine in the sense of that's not okay. It's fucked up and this dad sucks and I'm glad that the Goatman kills him. But, like, why the fuck are they hunting goats? Who even does that? Goats are domesticated animals. These aren't like deer or bears or something like this that are out roaming the woods. It's a goat. Like, I don't know. I think it's a weird thing. It makes sense only in the sense that it justifies the Goatman killing this dad for shooting a goat for no good reason. So then we go forward. The Goatman has killed all of the scientists who participated in this experiment, except one. Dr. What's his name? I forget. Joseph A. Fraser. Not that that matters for our purposes, but so he tracks down Fraser, gets a hold of the guy's son, and then basically Fraser is like, hey, don't kill my son because he's innocent and didn't have anything to do with the horrific transformation into a goat man that you underwent. But I, Dr. Fraser, with no access to resources because I've been stripped of my medical license and lost my job and all my friends and credibility, I have nonetheless come up with my own counter serum that will turn you back into the human that you once were. And I will give you that serum if you do not murder my son. Which seems like quite a reasonable proposition if you are willing to trust Dr. Fraser, which is probably not a great plan. But the Goatman, who does want to turn back into a human being so that he can actually reunite with his family, agrees to be injected with this new serum, which they do. He is transformed back into a human being, during the process of which he kills Fraser, inadvertently it seems, and knocks Fraser into his son. The son is substantially injured. The former Goatman, now turned back into this crying guy, takes the son outside to get medical treatment for him, where he's confronted by Agent Garcia, who, despite getting thrown out of a window and falling several stories, has recruited the local deputy to help him try and stop the Goatman. Garcia is like, I'm going to arrest you for murdering all those people as the Goatman. Which doesn't seem like a fantastic plan on Garcia's part, because if I were a member of a jury and a defense or a prosecutor made the case that someone had killed a bunch of people while being the Goatman, and now he's in court just looking like a regular dude, I might say I have some reasonable doubts about this. So sure, we know, we the readers of this graphic novel series know that this guy was the Goatman, killed all the scientists, murdered the family who was in this cabin, etc., etc. If you're Agent Garcia and you come back to the FBI and you file that report, intending that case to go to trial, you're probably not going to be in the FBI anymore. Like, there is not really an X-Files program where they're like, yeah, let's get Spooky Mulder and send him over to check out this weird shit that's going on. That's not really how things work. If you show up and you're like, yeah, he was the Goatman, but he got better, the case is not going anywhere. Sorry. That's how it is. Because no jury in the world is going to be like, yes, that makes sense. That checks out. So, it's weird. It's a weird bit. But they managed to resolve it in a way. Because the former Goatman convinces Agent Garcia, by appealing to his fatherly compassion, to let him go back and see his child one last time. Whereupon he's surrounded by some sort of black ops something or another, and he is summarily executed by law enforcement, FBI, paramilitary, something like this. And so that's the resolution, is he just gets fucking shot. And they're just like, whatever. And I guess that's practical in terms of it was never going to trial. No jury was ever going to be like, yeah, Goatman, that stacks up. But, you know, it's a weird bit, I think. Because, like, we don't know who these people are. They're just like, they just show up in helicopters with, like, SWAT teams. They don't seem to be, like, wearing any sort of identification on their uniforms or anything. It's literally just like solid black uniforms. So I don't know. Ultimately, my takeaway from this, I really do like this series. I know I've kind of been pointing out, like, here's a number of things that don't make sense or that are sort of contradictory or whatever it is, but I really do like the series. It is a good fun trilogy. But there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make that much sense, or that, like, it occurs in there really only because the plot requires it to occur, not because it makes sense in and of itself.